Morning, McGraw. Great to be talking to you.
Sure. Did I read that you and Senator McCaskill are on the same page and looking to do something in terms of something in Washington over the Rams moving from St. Louis to Los Angeles?
Well, we're definitely on the same page of being really disappointed that the Rams are leaving and the way they left, and we may very well get on the same page of what we could do to prevent something like that from happening in the future. But if we could have thought of that, we would have probably thought of it last year. We're going to look at what happens when a local community and a state has made a substantial commitment to the team, and then the team walks away from that investment that the community and the state have made, and hopefully there's going to be some interest in that. I mean, everybody that has a football team understands it's an important part of the dynamics of that community, and they've invested in it, and so we're going to be looking at that. But the one thing we definitely agree on is how unfortunate it is that the community stepped up like they did, and then the NFL decided that just somehow a bigger market was a better market.
And not to tell you how to do your job, but I would recommend doing that after we steal a team from somebody else.
Well, exactly. And, that is how the Rams came to St. Louis. So I'd love to see another team. I'd love to see a hockey team. I mean, a soccer team. I think we've got a great hockey team, a great baseball team. I think soccer might be one of the things, in addition to another football team, that St. Louis wants to look at. And we're having great success with soccer on the other side of the state, even though it's sadly right across the state line into that bad place.
We're coming in December. We had record amounts of flood, 10, 12 inches in 2 days, massive flooding. What were your thoughts as you sat and you watched all that?
Well, it was so unusual, was my first thought, because, one of the things you do learn if you're a senator from Missouri is that the rivers are a great asset to us and can be a bigger asset, but they're a real challenge. And before you know it, you understand a whole lot about levee issues and flood issues that almost nobody else in the country understands them the same way. But usually we have quite a bit of notice. The water's starting in South Dakota and North Dakota. It's coming down through Kansas, through Nebraska and Iowa and down the Missouri River, and we're getting ready for it. This was almost all south of I-70. We had communities all over the southern two-thirds of our state impacted by it, and I was at Arnold just again Sunday, sort of doing an after-action meeting with the mayor and the school superintendent and others there. The pastor at the Baptist church there, I think they had 800 Southern Baptist volunteers come in from as far away as New Mexico helping with the cleanup. But to see the 3 interstate highways all closed at some point during that flood was, I think, the first time that multiple interstates had been closed, 44, 70, and 55. And at 55, it was actually over the 55 bridge. And when you drive over that bridge today and look where the river normally is, you get a sense of just how much water is coming down through there. And now we're working with FEMA and the SBA to be sure that everything that needs to happen afterwards happens. And then we're going to look at whether some of these things, like the highway closures, can be prevented in a economically reasonable way.
The thing about it was, and I was stuck in my neighborhood for 2 days. I lived in a moat, basically, because the road was flooded. As much as people get angry, you can't get angry when Highway 70 gets flooded. I mean, that doesn't happen every day. That just shows you the amount of rain, and no system was built for that.
Well, exactly. And, looking at 70, I flew over 70 with the St. Charles County executive during the flood, and you can see there what happened at one of those tributaries, a creek really, into the Mississippi, backed up like it hadn't before. Part of that is because all that ground that used to be open to absorb water is now covered with houses and roofs and driveways and parking lots, all good for the growth of St. Charles County, but suddenly places where water used to be able to go, and now they're going all into one spot. But 70, 44, and 55, that has, if you're trying to get to the hospital, if you're trying to get to your kids, if you're trying to get to work, That's a big problem. And then the other problem is just the economic impact of one of our great advantages where we live, which is the transportation center of the country. And it's really good you can have a transportation system that you can rely on in a maximum way. And some things may not be solvable. I don't know. It's probably would not be practical to raise the Highway 55 bridge at over the Merrimack River, but it might very well be possible to look on both sides of that bridge if there were problems and see what could have been done before it got over the bridge.
Before we let you go, Senator Roy Blunt, the State of the Union was presented by the president, and Nikki Haley, the governor of South Carolina, gave your party's response. She was criticized by some in your own party for her response. What were your thoughts of her speech that night?
My response was she's a good face for our party. She handled what happened in Charleston in such a tremendous way. And I'm not inclined to try to look at every word somebody says and try to put a lot of meaning into it that they may or may not have intended. I thought she did a fine job and was a good response. And the president, more importantly, it was more the state of denial than the state of the union. I mean, if anybody thinks our foreign policy is working, or our domestic policy and our regulatory policy is everything it should be, I just think you have to believe that they're not paying attention or don't want to admit what's really happening. And, it was the president's last State of the Union message, and I thought that was maybe the best thing to say about it.
All right. Have you announced you're running for re-election yet?
No, I have not. But like I said, you'll be among the very first to know. I did have a chance to visit with Trent Lott the other day. I haven't about the book that he and Tom Daschle have written. I hear you're going to have them on next for a conversation about what those two former leaders think about how we would make the government work better. And frankly, I'm involved now in looking at the rules of the Senate to see if there aren't better ways to get people's work to the floor to be openly debated than we've been able to do the last 6 years, frankly.
Are you looking at that 60 vote rule?
I am. And whether you'd want to eliminate it totally or not is one question. But another question is, do you eliminate one of those barriers so that you can assure that bills get debated? And I think when you get to the point the bills are being debated, the bills have been ready the last 2 years. The difference in last year, the difference in last year and the previous 6 was that the bills were ready to be debated, particularly the spending bills. And this time the minority wouldn't let the bills come to the floor because the idea was we weren't spending enough money. And until we were going to spend more money, no bill was going to be debated. But if you could get these bills to the floor, if people can see what the choices are that need to be made and hear that debate, that's a better thing. And I think normally that would then lead to 60 senators saying, okay, we've now debated this bill. Let's have the final vote. The big obstacle now, it seems to me, is just getting to the debate itself, and we should find a way to do that.
Senator Roy Blunt, always a pleasure. Be safe, and we'll talk to you soon.
Hey, great to talk to you. See you soon and talk to you.